What happened is they rigged the election and I became president.
And he knows those computers better than anybody, all those computers, those vote counting computers. And we ended up winning Pennsylvania like in a landslide. So it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So thank you to Elon. We did great in 2016. A lot of people don't know. We did much better in 2020. We won. We won. We did win. It was a rigged election. It was a rigged election.
They called this a bombshell claim, and the arguments began where most political fights now begin, with data, skepticism, and a demand for evidence. Nathan Taylor of the Election Truth Alliance brought heat maps, hand count comparisons, and pointed patterns that, he argues, look odd enough to investigate. The immediate response from a skeptical statistician was blunt. He reviewed those maps, consulted peers, and concluded he didn't find direct proof of vote manipulation. His simpler explanation was that Republicans performed strongly in 2024 across the board, Trump's win, plus gains in the Senate and House, and that broad political swings can produce statistical signals that mimic tampering. Which is the more plausible story, a coordinated multi-state conspiracy that leaves paper trails intact and beats audits, or a decisive partisan performance? That's the question the skeptic put on the table. But the heart of the exchange wasn't a duel of accusations so much as a debate over method. Heat maps and statistical flags are exactly that, signals, not verdicts. Good statistics point investigators to where they ought to look. They don't, on their own, prove that a vote shifted. Nathan doesn't pretend otherwise. His case is procedural. Use stats to find anomalies, then move from the screen to the field. That shift from data to boots on the ground is central. ETA says it has done just that, identifying counties suggested by the maps, conducting local audits, interviewing poll workers, and compiling materials with investigative partners. Nathan emphasizes precedent as a motive for scrutiny. Intelligence reports from 2016 documented targeted campaigns that breached county election systems and voter registration databases. Precedent doesn't equal guilt in 2024, but it changes the baseline of plausibility. If systems were penetrable before, ignoring anomalies now would be reckless. ETA's early fieldwork, Nathan says, has uncovered leads in at least 2 Florida counties, with St. Lucie County singled out for deeper review. Those local probes are being prepared for public release and possible legal action. This is the difference between a pattern on a map and a litigable case. The latter needs affidavits, server logs, chain of custody records, and subpoenas. Nathan insists ETA is pursuing that pipeline from statistical signal to documentary evidence. So, how do you evaluate competing claims? Skeptics demand concrete paper trails showing vote changes or insider admissions.
Look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state, and flipping the state is a great testament to.
Investigators reply that some irregularities are systemic in nature, timing patterns, machine behavior, or unexplained surges, and these require subpoenas and forensic work to illuminate. One side wants immediate, ironclad proofs before acting. The other argues that suspicious patterns, informed by troubling precedent, justify serious investigation. There's a practical hurdle. Elections are decentralized by design. That's both a safeguard and a challenge. Proving coordinated manipulation requires local facts from many jurisdictions. Nathan's procedural argument is simple. Isolated anomalies can be explained away. Clusters across multiple counties strengthen the inference that something more is happening. It's pattern recognition plus legal standards, not just alarmism. At the same time, there's a civic responsibility to balance urgency with rigor. If serious allegations are proven false, trust erodes and reputations are damaged. If serious irregularities are proven true, the polity faces a crisis of legitimacy. Both outcomes demand methodical work, not instant headlines. The key is transparency. Publish methods, share data, and let independent experts replicate findings. So, where does this leave the listener? For now, neither the heat maps nor the skeptics' review settles the question. What matters is the next stage. Can investigators translate anomalies into evidence that meets a court standards? Will audits, subpoenas, and forensic exams corroborate the patterns the maps suggest? Or will deeper analysis show that political swings and reporting quirks explain the signals? This chapter closes with a choice for you. Do you treat statistical flags as signs that merit full forensic follow-up, or do you demand immediate proof before the public breathes a word? Democracy asks for both vigilance and restraint. If we want trust to survive, we must insist on careful investigations and transparent results.
Now,
We just moved from patterns on a map to a very specific worry: infiltration. The claim is straightforward and chilling in its simplicity. Foreign actors targeted county systems years ago. But the nuance matters. Did they touch vote counts? Or did they touch the infrastructure around who is registered to vote? The difference is huge. A recent exchange laid this out plainly. Reporting from 2016 showed coordinated cybersecurity campaigns that accessed county systems and voter registration databases across many states. Some officials deny broad infiltration. Independent reviewers found no proof, then, that votes were changed. That matters, but it doesn't close the conversation. First, there are two different systems at play. One is registration, the list of who is eligible. The other is tabulation, the machines and software that count votes. Infiltrating a registration database is not the same as flipping ballots at the tabulator. Yet access to registration lists has real consequences. Stolen registration data reveals who is active, addresses, and histories, intelligence that could be weaponized if paired with tabulation access. Think of it like robbers casing a house. They may not steal anything at first, but they learn the alarm system. A breach without immediate theft still changes the threat landscape. In Illinois, officials reported that more than 200,000 registered voters' information was stolen in a 2016 breach. No vote flips were proven, but identities were compromised. What do you do with that fact? Lock the doors or treat the breach as grounds for a deeper forensic sweep? Malware in some breaches could, in theory, enable manipulation. Reports suggest capability existed even if manipulation wasn't observed. Capability is not proof of use. But capability plus motive plus opportunity is the classic triangle investigators watch for. If systems were shown to be vulnerable, the default response in any secure organization would be a full forensic audit. Why would elections be treated differently? Skeptics are right that both pieces are usually necessary. You need registration information and tabulation control to change outcomes at scale. One without the other is likely insufficient. Proving a coordinated manipulation across dozens of jurisdictions would probably require leaks, whistleblowers, chain of custody lapses, and forensic logs. That's why the statistician on the program leaned toward a simpler explanation. Republicans performed strongly in 2024. But performed well does not explain every anomaly, and it does not erase the fact of earlier vulnerabilities. So, what does rigorous investigation look like? Nathan sketches a path: flag statistical anomalies, run targeted local audits, interview poll workers, subpoena server logs, and assemble affidavits. That pipeline is slow because it must produce court-ready records. Are institutions prepared to run that gauntlet when political costs are high? Will prosecutors pursue deep, cross-jurisdictional cyber inquiries when the risks are reputational and political? Practical reality complicates things. U.S. elections are decentralized by design. That architecture prevents single points of failure, but it also means proving wrongdoing requires local facts from many elections offices. Is proving a multi-state scheme impossible?
no.
Is it easy? Absolutely not. Thus, we should be careful not to leap from capability to conspiracy, but also careful not to shrug off warning signs. There is also motive to consider. Why steal registration data? To know who votes, to target persuasion or suppression, to craft precise disinformation. Why compromise tabulation systems? To alter counts directly. Each scenario demands different remedies: better cyber hygiene on the registration side and transparent, verifiable audits on the tabulation side. Finally, think about stakes and precedent. If allegations are false, the political cost is erosion of trust and possibly legal consequences for reckless claims. If allegations are true, the polity faces a legitimacy crisis that must be addressed. Both outcomes require method, patience, and public transparency, not instant verdicts. What we cannot do is pretend vulnerability doesn't exist because it's inconvenient. If we want elections to be unquestioned, we must insist on layered defenses, cybersecurity, transparent audits, paper trails, and independent verification. That work is expensive and necessary. Will we commit or leave democracy to doubt? Decide now. Clark County comes up a lot in these conversations because it's a tidy little example of how data can mislead if you don't understand the context. At first glance, you see a signal. Low turnout in some precincts and a sudden jump in votes as machines report higher counts. Is that smoke signaling fire? Maybe. But the more you peel it back, the more ordinary explanations appear: demographics, outdated roles, and the quirks of rural precincts. Here's the core point. Turnout measured as votes divided by registered voters depends critically on the accuracy of registration lists. In places with older populations, where people move away or die and rolls aren't scrubbed fast enough, turnout can look artificially low. That low turnout can create an illusion that some locations are anomalous. So before you accuse an algorithm, ask, are the voter rolls current? Nathan and his team counter that their Nevada analysis uses cast vote records, individual votes per machine per location, not turnout ratios. That removes one variable. They show a pattern where, after about 250 ballots per machine, a candidate's share increases sharply. That ballot per machine effect is not a turnout artifact. It demands explanation. Is it machine behavior? A reporting quirk? Or something more troubling? International election research gives us a reference point. Analysts who study suspicious contests note patterns that repeat: unusually high turnout in certain places followed by sudden surges for a dominant party. Seeing a similar shape domestically raises eyebrows. Similarity of pattern is not proof of identical causes, but it does justify closer inspection. Minnesota offers a test case. In District 8, ETA compared rural hand count precincts to matched machine count precincts and found consistent discrepancies. Hand count precincts produced flat vote shares across turnout ranges. Machine count precincts showed shifts. Nathan admitted their initial heat map had errors and corrected them. The corrections did not erase the statistical relationship that worried them, so they dug deeper into down-ballot races too. A healthy skeptic will ask about demographics, and that happened on the program. Rural precincts skew in age, education, occupation, and political preference. If a precinct is predisposed to favor a candidate, higher turnout there will naturally raise that candidate's share. Could demographics explain Minnesota's variance? Possibly. Nathan says he is investigating those alternative explanations, not ignoring them. Robust analysis means trying to explain away differences before concluding malfeasance. So, what should investigators do next? Compare like with like. Match hand count and machine precincts by age, registration churn, and voting access. Audit the machines, not just the outputs. Look for reporting software quirks, batch uploads, or aggregation rules that could produce apparent spikes. And crucially, interview local officials and poll workers. Their testimony often supplies the missing variable a map can't show. There's a methodological question beneath all this. How conservative should examiners be when deciding a pattern is suspicious? Too loose and you feel paranoia. Too strict and you risk ignoring a real problem. The answer is procedural. Document everything, publish methods, and invite independent replication. If the pattern survives tests that control for demographics and administrative differences, it becomes harder to dismiss. Remember practical reality. U.S. elections are decentralized by design. That prevents single points of failure, but makes proving a multi-jurisdiction scheme painstaking. Proving coordination would require synchronized evidentiary threads from many offices. Is that impossible? No. Is it easy? Absolutely not. So don't leap from anomaly to conspiracy, but don't shrug off clustered anomalies either. Finally, consider stakes. If an anomaly indicates a systemic problem, the remedy is audits, subpoenas, and forensic work. If the anomaly dissolves once controls are applied, that too must be reported loudly. Transparency wins either way. Show the data, show the controls, and show what remains unexplained. Clark County and Minnesota are not verdicts. They are invitations to investigate properly, to match stats with human records, test alternate hypotheses, and treat anomalies as starting points, not conclusions. Demand audits, demand transparency, and insist that every unexplained pattern be answered with fact, not rumor. Now, the debate about turnout bins and stair-step patterns is where method meets meaning. Analysts in District 8 and Clark County describe a strange behavior. When you group precincts by turnout, 30%, 40%, 50%, you sometimes see a nearly linear jump in one candidate's share as turnout rises. In plain terms, higher turnout, more votes for one side. That's the pattern flagged in several states. Let's be precise about the graphs. The analysts moved beyond raw scatter plots and binned precincts by 10% increments to make the data legible. In some hand-counted rural precincts, the vote share is relatively flat across bins. In similar-sized machine count precincts, however, the data shows ascent. Higher turnout bins correlate with larger shares for one candidate. The team estimates an almost one-to-one relationship. A 10-point turnout increase roughly matches a 10-point vote share gain. That kind of slope is eye-catching. Yet data visualization is tricky. Binning smooths clutter but creates sensitivity. If only a few precincts sit in the highest turnout bins, the averages can wobble. In District 8, the analysts even saw an odd rebound in the 90% bin where the other candidate's share ticked up again, a statistical blip that can be noise. The host caught that, and the analyst conceded it. Small sample sizes make extreme bins unreliable unless you weight by vote totals. Weight matters as much as shape. Auditors ask these questions first. Demographics are the natural alternative. Rural precincts skew older, less diverse, and differently mobilized. If a place is predisposed to favor a candidate, higher turnout there will naturally raise that candidate's share. The team acknowledges this and says their work aims to control for those differences, not ignore them. Robust analysis checks simpler causes first. That is science. There's another signal that matters: mode of voting. Across multiple locales, the pattern appears strongest in Election Day and early in-person voting, while mail ballots look statistically normal. That split is crucial. Mail ballots involve different procedures and demographics. If only in-person aggregates show the slope, investigators must scrutinize machine behavior, workflows, and reporting systems. International research offers context. Studies of manipulated contests often show the same basic shape: clusters of high turnout that coincide with sudden spikes for the dominant party. The resemblance does not prove causation here, but it suggests deeper forensics are warranted. The U.S. is different, but similarity of shape elevates the question from curiosity to priority. So, what do investigators do? Match precincts by demographics and voting mode. Weight bins by votes, not precinct count. Inspect machine logs and reporting software. Interview poll workers about surges or resets. Publish methods for replication. These steps transform a visual pattern into either court-ready evidence or a reassuring null result. There is a procedural balance. Premature fraud claims based on unweighted charts risk reputational harm and public distrust. If you dismiss cross-jurisdictional patterns without testing, you may ignore a real vulnerability. The right response is neither reflexive dismissal nor instant indictment. It is transparent, methodical follow-up. One technical pointer: examine temporal reporting. Are spikes occurring at specific upload times? Do certain machines report large blocks at once? Time-stamped logs often reveal aggregation patterns that maps hide. Community engagement matters too. Affidavits from poll workers and local officials can surface operational anomalies numbers miss. Legal teams should be ready with targeted subpoenas to compel server logs and chain of custody documents when warranted. Practically, U.S. elections are decentralized by design. That decentralization prevents single points of failure, but makes proving multi-office coordination laborious. Proving coordination would require synchronized evidentiary threads from many offices. Is that impossible?
No. Is it easy?
Absolutely not. So don't leap from anomaly to conspiracy, but don't shrug off clustered anomalies either. Finally, remember the civic frame. Statistical anomalies are invitations, not verdicts. If patterns survive demographic controls and weighted reanalysis, escalate to subpoenas and forensic audits. If patterns dissolve, publish the null findings loudly. Transparency in method and outcome builds confidence more than partisan certainty. So where do you stand? Do you demand immediate legal action on raw visual patterns, or do you insist on careful weighting, replication, and local audits before drawing harder conclusions? The answer defines the line between healthy skepticism and manufactured certainty. The heart of the objection is simple. How could human mobilization produce the same turnout-vote relationship across dozens of precincts, counties, and states? If you're trying to target specific precincts, you can't know the turnout until after the votes are cast. That makes a coordinated, human-driven bump across a whole district implausible, which is why analysts find the ubiquity of the pattern in liberal counties and conservative ones in Clark County and Philadelphia, in North Carolina and Florida alarming. It suggests the cause may not be ordinary mobilization, but something systemic that cuts across local politics. Nathan pushes the argument from process to evidence. He says ETA moved from maps to door-to-door work, matching registration lists to who actually voted, and looking for anomalies in the public records. That's where the claim becomes concrete. A house under construction during the election, a family that moved counties after the vote, and yet a voting record showing someone from that address cast a ballot in that county. Those are the kinds of concrete anomalies that change the conversation from statistical curiosity to possible manipulation. But the burden of proof is high, and skeptics on the program were right to press on it. Anecdotes are not a verdict. Door knocks that find mismatched addresses can signal clerical errors, outdated roles, or sloppy data hygiene. They can also indicate more troubling things. The only way to know is through methodical corroboration, multiple such mismatches within a precinct, matching server logs, chain of custody questions, and corroborating testimony from local election workers. This is why ETA says its work is moving toward legal channels. Public reports and Substack posts are the start. Subpoenas and formal audits are the next step if patterns persist. Nathan described collaborating with journalists and investigators, producing public dossiers on counties like St. Lucie, where anomalies appear. He emphasized that fieldwork, interviews, records analysis, and local observation supplies the direct evidence some statisticians say is missing. Consider the logical structure. Anomalies on maps suggest targets. Fieldwork turns targets into case files. Forensic subpoenas turn case files into legal evidence. Each phase requires more resources, time, and institutional weight. That's both the strength and the frustration of this approach. It's slow, but it's the pathway that produces admissible evidence rather than headlines. There's also a tactical question. Where should investigators look first? Nathan argues for priority on places where statistical signals cluster across modes, machine reporting, election day spikes, and mismatches between registration and cast records. He points to Miami-Dade, Clark County, and Philadelphia as test cases where the combination of map anomalies and on-the-ground irregularities merits deeper scrutiny. Those are not random selections. They're where multiple threads converge. Skeptics counter with a simple point. If a multi-jurisdiction scheme existed, leaks and whistleblowers would likely surface. Coordinating thousands of officials and vendors across states without a single credible insider accounting is hard to imagine. That skepticism matters because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And that's precisely what ETA is trying to produce. Extraordinary, verifiable documentation that can be independently reviewed. There's a civic tension here. If investigators overreach and claim manipulation without airtight proof, the result is erosion of trust. If investigators underplay suspicious clusters, real vulnerabilities could remain unexamined. The public wants clarity, but clarity depends on process. We either fund the slow, expensive work of forensic audits and subpoenas, or we accept that some anomalies will remain unresolved and our confidence in elections will erode. So, what did Nathan actually show on the ground? He told a story of door knocks in St. Lucie, houses under construction listed as having votes, residents who moved and found voting records tied to previous residents, registration entries that didn't match physical occupancy. Those are not decisive on their own, but they are the kind of anomaly that, multiplied across precincts and tied to statistical flags, becomes compelling. We end where we began, with a choice. Do we treat maps as clues that demand forensic follow-up, or do we dismiss them for lack of instant proof? Nathan and ETA argue for full-spectrum inquiry, data, fieldwork, and legal process. Skeptics demand ironclad proof before the public is unsettled. Both sides can claim prudence. Both sides can claim risk. The only politically neutral remedy is transparency and thorough investigation, not to satisfy politics, but to preserve the integrity of the system we all depend on. The democratic remedy is clear. Fund independent audits, compel transparency from officials, and publish the forensic records. This is how democracy survives doubt. We must choose inquiry over indifference.